The bill brought audiences into heart-pounding criminal cases, but the most painful tragedies happened behind the scenes. One actor collapsed after hearing he was fired. Another lost his young grandchild forever in the tsunami disaster, and many others passed away amid illness and obscurity. They were once heroes on screen. But who will tell their real stories? Kevin Lloyd as DC Tosh Lines. Kevin Lloyd portrayed DC Tosh Lines in The Bill in 1984 when he was 35 years old. DC Tosh Lines wasn't handsome or flashy, but he was a detective who felt real, sharp, and deeply relatable. To the audience, he was the comic relief amid tense investigations. But behind the beloved character was a man gradually losing control, both in life and to alcohol. Kevin Reardon Lloyd was born on March 28, 1949, in Derby, England, into a family with a policing tradition. But instead of following in the footsteps of his father, who died in the line of duty in 1970, Kevin chose the stage. His childhood was far from peaceful. He suffered from Perthes disease, a disorder that causes hip bone necrosis, leaving him in constant, silent pain. After initially pursuing a career in law, he shifted paths and enrolled in East 15 acting school, unknowingly beginning a journey that would end far too soon. Despite his success as Tosh, Kevin battled a long-standing alcohol addiction, one that spanned decades. His marriage to Leslie, whom he married in 1973, ended in 1995 after 22 years together, leaving behind 7 children. His wife accused him of being violent and out of control when drunk. The death of their youngest daughter, little Chloe, from meningitis at just 17 months old, deepened the emotional wounds he carried. In 1998, after several incidents of arriving drunk on set, Kevin was fired from The Bill on April 27th. He entered a rehab clinic in Burton-upon-Trent, but just days later he snuck out to drink, returned in a semi-conscious state, vomited blood, suffocated, and died in his sleep on May 2, 1998. He was 49. His net worth was estimated at around $1 million. His death was a major shock to the cast and especially to close friend Mark Wingut, Jim Carver, who later channeled that grief into playing a recovering alcoholic officer in the following season. Kevin's name remains spoken of as a man who loved too much and destroyed himself with that very love. Colin Tarant, as Inspector Andrew Monroe. At the age of 38, Colin Tarant played Inspector Andrew Monroe in The Bill in 1990. He embodied calmness, integrity, and justice, a respected leader amid the chaos at Sun Hill Station. Audiences admired him for his unwavering morality, but behind that composed face was a man quietly wrestling with darkness inside his mind. Colin Tarant was born on June 14, 1952, in Shirebrook, Derbyshire, into a traditional working-class family. He initially studied education and English literature at the University of Exeter, planning to become a teacher. But the stage called to him, from early days at a community theater to performances with prestigious companies like the RSC and Leicester Phoenix. His life seemed stable. No scandals, no controversies. But within that quietness, Colin began to develop depression, hidden from everyone. A friend once said, "Colin was good at hiding. He wore sadness like a uniform every day." After leaving The Bill in 2002, he continued acting on stage and TV, from Holby City and Midsummer Murders to Casualty. His portrayal of Brian Clough on stage in 2005 received high praise. But the sadness never seemed to leave him. Colin worked both as an actor and returned to teaching to maintain a steady income, sometimes teaching at secondary schools when acting roles were scarce. Many colleagues only learned later that he had harmed himself multiple times and had been hospitalized for depression, yet he always kept it hidden when stepping onto the stage. On January 26, 2012, Colin Tarant was found to have taken his own life at his home in Bristol from self-inflicted stab wounds. He died at Bristol Royal Hospital at the age of 59. A month later, the court confirmed he had died by suicide following a period of untreated depression. His net worth was estimated at $800,000, not much, but the result of a lifetime of diligent work. His final stage appearance was in Calendar Girls. No one knew it would be his last. George Rossy as D.C. Duncan Lennox. At the age of 38, George Rossy took on the role of D.C. Duncan Lennox when he joined the bill in 1998. With piercing eyes and a biting sense of humor, he embodied the kind of detective people trusted, realistic, uncompromising, and deeply grounded. But in contrast to that hardened on-screen persona, George Rossy's life was a quiet journey that ended in a tragedy no one saw coming. George was born on September 28, 1961 in Goodwin, Glasgow, into an Italian immigrant family. His parents were from Valvori, a small village in Lazio, and ran an ice cream van in the neighborhood. His childhood was tied to those days selling ice cream on the streets of Scotland, but even from a young age, George dreamed of roles bigger than everyday life. Later, he attended East 15 Acting School, where he honed his craft while carrying the memories of a young Italian boy growing up in Britain. Different, yet determined to prove himself. Before the bill, George appeared in several productions such as Comfort and Joy, The Singing Detective, and The Big Man alongside Liam Neeson. But it was his role as D.C. Lennox that brought his name to millions of viewers. In real life, George was a devoted husband to his wife Katrin since 1988 and a father to 2 children, Matilda and Santino. After leaving the bill in 2003, Rossy continued to act in both film and theater, though he rarely appeared in the media. Then, unexpectedly, on January 5, 2022, the devastating news was confirmed. He had passed away at age 60 from pancreatic cancer, a disease he had been quietly battling for a long time. He left behind a net worth estimated at around $600,000, not a fortune, but a testament to a decent, serious, and respected career. His death was confirmed by his niece, Louisa Rossy, a simple farewell that shook the Bill fan community to its core. Ben Roberts as Chief Inspector Derek Conway. Ben Roberts played Chief Inspector Derek Conway at the age of 37 when he joined the bill in 1987. As the commanding officer of Sun Hill, with a firm yet compassionate demeanor, Derek Conway represented authority, order, and loss, both on screen and in real life. When his character was killed off in a car bombing, millions of viewers were stunned. But what they didn't expect was that years later, Ben Roberts himself would pass away quietly, leaving behind an irreplaceable void in the hearts of fans. Ben was born on July 1, 1950, in Bangor, Gwynedd, Wales, into a modest family. After attending Friars School, he pursued his theatrical dream at the Webber Douglas Academy of Dramatic Art in London, graduating in 1978. The road to acting wasn't easy. He took on various odd jobs to support his dream of being on stage. But his determination and ambition led him to powerful roles, especially that of Conway, a character that mirrored his own nature, disciplined, honest, and uncompromising. After leaving the bill in 2002, Ben continued his artistic journey in both film and television, appearing in productions such as Jane Eyre, 2011, A Little Chaos, 2014, and Tim Burton's Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, 2016. However, few knew that in his final years, he quietly battled chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD, an illness that gradually drained his strength and forced him to turn down several projects. Despite this, he continued to attend fan events regularly, even when he needed a walking cane for support. Ben Roberts passed away on June 7, 2021, at the age of 70. He left behind his wife, Helen Lloyd, a veteran television producer, a son, and a granddaughter. His net worth was estimated at around $700,000, but more valuable than any amount was his professional legacy, a man who lived fully for his art. Tony Scandel as D.S. Ted Roach. Tony Scandel portrayed Detective Sergeant Ted Roach in 1984, when he was 39 years old. From the very first moments on screen, Ted Roach captivated audiences with his tough, gritty demeanor and investigative style that often bent the rules. But Tony Scandel, the man behind Roach, carried within himself silent conflicts that spilled into his real life. Born on August 14, 1945 in Kinsale, County Cork, Ireland, Tony grew up in the shadow of his father, Tom Scandel, a goalkeeper who played for Ireland in 1954. While his father pursued football, Tony chose the arts. He found early success on stage and television, appearing in productions like Flash Gordon, 1980, and then The Bill, where his initial two-episode guest role turned into nearly a decade-long tenure as a series mainstay. But off-screen, his life was far from stable. In 2002, he declared bankruptcy with debts exceeding £42,000, plunging him into financial crisis and away from the spotlight. Though once widely beloved, Scandel gradually disappeared from mainstream television. He moved to Beccles near Lowestoft, living quietly with his partner Agnes Lillis. Together, they founded a community theater company called Eastbound. From the bright lights of film sets, he transitioned to teaching evening acting classes for adults at the Seagull Theater. He converted to Buddhism, embracing a meditative and simple lifestyle after turbulent years of marital and financial struggles, and he had 4 children from 3 different relationships. Tony Scandel passed away on May 26, 2020, at the age of 74. The cause of death was recorded as natural, though reports noted he had been battling illness for some time. His net worth was estimated at around $500,000, but what people remember most is the piercing stare of Roach during interrogations, the deep voice that carried the soul of Ireland, and a once brilliant past that flickered out too soon. Graham Cole as PC Tony Stamp. Graham Cole was 32 years old when he stepped into the role of PC Tony Stamp in The Bill in 1984. As the dedicated police driver, the ideal colleague, and the quiet mentor to countless young officers at Sun Hill, Tony Stamp wasn't flashy, but he was the steadfast heart of the entire series. Yet behind that extraordinary perseverance was a man who had sacrificed greatly for the very consistency audiences came to love. Born on March 16, 1952 in Willesden, Middlesex, Graham was the youngest of 3 siblings. Before entering television, he spent 12 years working in theater and musical productions, juggling fatherhood, marriage, and his dream of becoming a recognized actor. In the early 1980s, he appeared in numerous uncredited roles in Doctor Who and films like The Living Daylights and Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, but never quite broke through. Cole once shared that staying with a single role for so long was a challenge of identity and psychology. When he left The Bill in 2009, it took him nearly 3 years to shed the shadow of Tony Stamp. But he didn't fall apart. Cole poured himself into charity work, serving as chairman of the National Holiday Fund, supporting Childline, becoming a familiar face at the Grand Order of Water Rats, and was appointed OBE in 2010 for these contributions. As of 2025, Graham Cole is 73 years old, living with his wife and 2 children, still regularly appearing on television shows, at charity events, and in local theater productions. His net worth is estimated at around $1.5 million, but that figure doesn't begin to measure the spiritual value he brought to British television and to millions of devoted fans. Trudy Goodwin as Sergeant June Ackland. Trudy Goodwin played Sergeant June Ackland, starting at age 32 when she joined The Bill in 1984. As one of the very first faces to appear from the pilot episode Wooden Top, and with a tenure that lasted over 23 years on television, June Ackland wasn't just a police officer. She was the humanitarian heart in a world of suspicion, the balancing force between duty and emotion. But this memorable role wasn't born from a simple script. It was the culmination of Trudy Goodwin's real-life experiences, a woman who gave nearly half her life to one role without ever losing herself. Born on November 23, 1951, in England, Trudy didn't come from a showbiz family but carried within her a deep desire to be in front of the camera. When she took on the role of June Ackland, she didn't just act. She infused the character with the wounds and inner conflicts of a woman trying to find her place in a male-dominated profession. In her personal life, Trudy married actor Kit Jackson in 1979, and they had 2 daughters, one of whom is Ellie Jackson, lead singer of the electronic band LaRue. But being a mother while filming almost daily for 2 decades was never easy. She openly admitted, "I missed the most important years of my children growing up." After leaving the Bill in 2007, Trudy remained active on television, appearing in Emmerdale, Doctors, and even game shows like Countdown, Loose Women, and All-Star Mr. and Mrs. Though she remained scandal-free, she publicly criticized ITV for messing up the Bill, which ultimately led to its cancellation in 2010. She also became involved in charity work and served on the committee of Denville Hall, a retirement home for elderly entertainers, as a way of giving back to the community that had nurtured her. As of 2025, Trudy Goodwin is 73 years old, with a net worth estimated at $2 million, a fitting figure for the actress who holds the record for longest-running female police role in British TV history. She continues to act, not for money, but for the undying love of the craft. In the eyes of viewers, June Ackland never truly ended, and neither did Trudy. She stands as living proof that a woman can be an artist, a mother, and a pillar of strength, without giving up any part of herself. That may be her most challenging role, but also the most beautiful one she ever played. Eric Richard as Sergeant Bob Crier. Eric Richard played Sergeant Bob Crier, joining the Bill at age 44 in 1984. For 2 decades, he was the father figure of Sun Hill Station, calm, respected, and a spiritual anchor amid professional storms. With his warm voice and stern yet compassionate eyes, Bob Crier wasn't just a character. He was a symbol of responsibility and professional ethics. But behind that rock-solid image, Eric Richards' life was marked by one of the most heartbreaking family tragedies no father or grandfather should ever face. Born Eric Smith on June 27, 1940, in Margate, Kent, England, he became a familiar face in British theatre long before television, performing at venues like the Royal Court, Stratford East, and Royal Exchange. He didn't come from an artistic lineage, but through pure passion and talent, he carved out a name for himself in classic stage roles and television appearances, including Doctor Who, Open All Hours, Holby City, and Shoestring. His role as Bob Crier felt destined, and he stayed with it for 20 years, from the first episode until the show's creative direction changed. But his life changed forever on December 26, 2004. During the Indian Ocean tsunami, his 2-month-old grandson, baby Charlie Smith, was swept from the arms of his father, Eric's son, and died in a restaurant in Unawatuna, Sri Lanka. Charlie became the youngest British victim of that disaster. The sudden, devastating loss left an unhealable scar in Eric's soul, a devoted grandfather. For many years he said nothing publicly, but in a rare interview later, he choked up. "I can never forget, and I don't want to forget." At 85 years old in 2025, Eric Richards still lives with his wife Tina, and occasionally takes on small roles, from the Oscar-winning Short Stutterer, 2016, to guest appearances in Dunkirk, 2017, EastEnders, and most recently Call the Midwife in 2025. His net worth is estimated at around $1.2 million. But what fans value most isn't his career. It's how he carried his grief. In the hearts of the Bill's audience, Bob Crier is the teacher who never left. And in real life, Eric Richard is the man who bore a lifelong wound, but still stood tall, just like the character he once portrayed. Jeff Stewart as PC Reg Hollis. Jeff Stewart played PC Reg Hollis, first appearing in the Bill in 1984 at the age of 28. One of the longest-serving characters in the series, Reg Hollis was not a muscular cop or a heroic crusader for justice. He was different, anxious, obsessed with paperwork and procedures, long-winded in conversation, but utterly loyal to his job and his fellow officers. It was this quirky humanity that allowed Jeff Stewart to turn Reg into one of the Bill's most beloved characters. Yet behind the familiar glasses and bald head was a fragile soul. And when the character was erased, the man who portrayed him nearly was too. Jeff Stewart was born on October 28, 1955, in Aberdeen, Scotland, and raised in Southampton in a working-class family. Before the Bill, he had small roles in Doctor Who, High to High, and other lesser-known TV dramas. But the role of Reg Hollis made him a nationally familiar face. By 2007, he was the last remaining cast member from the pilot episode. Then, in a cold decision, ITV terminated his contract in early 2008, a blow so devastating that just hours after receiving the news, Jeff attempted suicide by slashing his wrists at home. Fortunately, he managed to call emergency services in time and survived. In a later statement, Stewart said, "I love acting, it's my life, and losing Reg felt like my whole world collapsed." That moment marked a turning point. From a steady television actor, he plunged into deep depression, struggling between the fading spotlight and a directionless future. But he didn't give up. In 2011, he returned to the screen in Under Jacob's Ladder, playing a Russian-German prisoner, and unexpectedly won Best Actor at the Manhattan Film Festival, a small but resounding victory for someone who had once stood on the edge of despair. As of 2025, Jeff Stewart is 69 years old, with a net worth estimated at around $1.8 million. He continues to live quietly, yet never withdrew from the industry. He now appears with a new image, long hair, a gray beard, and a contemplative presence, but recently surprised the public by assisting Hampshire police in apprehending a thief, shocking fans who realized that PC Hollis is still out there. Jeff Stewart's story isn't just one of an actor. It's a survival tale through darkness, to hold on to a fragile light called passion. Mark Wingut as PC Jim Carver. Mark Wingut played PC Jim Carver, joining the Bill in 1984 at the age of 23. As one of the series' original faces, Jim Carver began as a young, naive officer full of idealism. But over time, the character evolved into a deeply complex man, grappling with alcoholism, debt, and domestic abuse. This emotionally demanding arc didn't just move viewers. It also pushed Mark Wingut to the brink as he hovered between himself and his character, between performance and reality. Born on January 1, 1961, in Melton Mowbray, Leicestershire, Mark was the son of a Royal Navy officer and grew up moving from Malta to Singapore, eventually settling in Portsmouth. From a young age, he dreamed of acting, joining the National Youth Theatre, and made a striking debut in Quadrophenia, 1979, as a rebellious biker. But it was the role of Jim Carver in Wooden Top, the pilot for the Bill, that reshaped his entire career. For 21 years, he lived that character, through highs, lows, and rebirths. In real life, Wingut also faced scandal. His personal life made headlines in 2000 when a fire-eating performer revealed an affair with him. His marriage to makeup artist Sharon Martin temporarily ended, though they reconciled in 2003 and went on to raise their daughter Jamila and Martin's child from a previous relationship. Though Wingut never publicly battled depression or addiction like Jim Carver, he did confess, "Playing Carver for so long drained me. I took his pain home with me every night." As of 2025, Mark Wingut is 64 years old, with a net worth estimated at $1.3 million, and remains active in the industry, appearing in EastEnders, Heartbeat, Missing, and taking on quiet guest roles in independent films. He doesn't chase fame. Instead, he chooses stillness, even publishing a personal essay about artist G.G. Allin, exploring a different kind of artistic darkness as a way to release his own pent-up energy. To the public, Mark Wingut is Carver, and Carver is Mark Wingut, a character born from real life, who then circled back to shape the very life that created him, like a loop that never quite closes. Chris Ellison as DCI Frank Burnside. Chris Ellison portrayed DCI Frank Burnside in The Bill in 1984 when he was 38 years old. Burnside was the kind of man who would take the long way around to do the right thing, ruthless if needed, cold when necessary, and absolutely unforgiving toward evil. Under Chris Ellison's command, the character didn't just exist, he dominated. Even after leaving The Bill, Burnside was given his own spin-off series, Burnside, a rare privilege for any British television actor. Born on December 16, 1946 in London, Chris Ellison was once a graphic artist, taxi driver, and a naval serviceman before finding his path in acting. The turning point came through small roles in The Sweeney, Dempsey, and Makepeace, and eventually The Bill. The character originally went by the name Tommy Burnside, but when he became a central figure, the name was changed to Frank Burnside to avoid clashing with the identity of a real-life police officer. From that point on, he wasn't just an actor. He was Burnside, a living legend. Later, Ellison appeared in EastEnders, Casualty, New Tricks, and even Celebrity Big Brother 2015. But the shadow of Burnside never left him. Then, in 2020, a devastating event occurred. Chris suffered a stroke at his home in Brighton. His wife, Anita Joannou, found him collapsed on the bedroom floor. Emergency responders were unable to carry him down the spiral staircase and had to remove part of the roof to evacuate him. The diagnosis, aphasia, a severe language disorder that robbed him of the ability to speak, though he could still understand others. He withdrew from public life, fearful of being recognized, yet unable to speak as he once did. His wife and 2 children became his caretakers, and his longtime co-star, Mark Wingut, remained by his side like family. In 2025, Chris Ellison is 78 years old, with a net worth estimated at $1.5 million, living quietly in Brighton. The voice that once struck fear into millions is now reduced to a labored whisper. But he has refused to let his personal pain remain silent. Alongside his wife, he has become a passionate advocate for aphasia awareness, inspiring others who are losing their voices, but not their will to live. To fans of The Bill, Chris Ellison is not just Burnside, he is a true warrior, both on screen and off. And that brings us to the end of today's video. Which of these legendary actors left the deepest impression on you? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to follow us on this emotional journey through the untold, tearful stories behind the spotlight.